Good afternoon, core literacy team. I hope everyone is doing well. So this is our modeling of a blended classroom. Doing it for a couple reasons. Probably the primary one is that the board office room on Thursday when we are supposed to meet is fully occupied by other individuals, so we needed a different area to do it. But probably more importantly would be that there's a lot of work that needs to be done on Thursday that for you to finish what you started earlier in the month, and then add in some of the other pieces that we need to have so we can get sent out to teachers by the end of next week and start getting feedback from teachers. So with that in mind, I don't want to waste any time on your work day, so I'm going to send this out prior to Thursday so that you can view before Thursday, ask me any questions before Thursday, and that way on Thursday when you get to work, you are able to spend that entire day working on the curriculum maps. Again, I want to thank you for the work and the importance of this work, that we're able to create a framework for our students and a guaranteed and viable curriculum for our students across our district that is, while it allows us to ensure that all students are given the opportunity to learn, it recognizes that teachers in our district are what make this district so special and provides them the flexibility to tailor instruction to meet the needs of their students. So the work is important, and I thank you for that work. I'm just going to briefly go through the expectations for the work on Thursday and where we need to hopefully be by the end of the day. Ms. Collins has sent out locations for your meetings. She sent those out on Monday, so you should have the locations of where you are going to meet, and we will be sure, one of us, I'm going to try to get to every place on Thursday, but if I'm not able to get to your place, someone will definitely be by your site at least one time to check in, and we'll have our cell phones and of course emails as well for you to ask questions during the day Thursday, as you will be at different locations getting the work done. So I'm going to put my face down here and put up some information, better looking than me. So just to review here, this is what we was handed out at the last core literacy meeting, and this is where we are on this timeline. So if you remember last time, we really wanted to focus on creating the units, figuring out the integrated content, and then putting our writing standards and our reading standards into those units. So that was the big focus. So should have finished that up last time and into that unit organizer and pacing guide. So what the goal is for February 18th, and though it looks like a lesser number of tasks, I actually think it will take more time. So that is why you need the entire day for your work. If you did get any feedback from your colleagues, you want to edit and revise those units as you've had them, or if you went home and thought about them and need to make changes. So that's the first thing. Then we need to add in language fluency and word work standards, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, complete learning target page, review suggestions for anchor text, and then we will get those out to teachers. So this is a sheet. I'm going to attach this all to the email I send this video in, so you'll have all this attached as well, but it's also in the shared folder, the shared Google Drive folder. So that's the overview of the work. So let's talk about first, let's look at those pacing guides that we did last time, just to remind us of where we should be on those pacing guides. So here are the pacing guides, and this is the blank template that I gave you. This is the pacing guide that you should have completed last time, and I have all of them except one grade level still working to get. But these unit titles with your genre focus and your primary integrated content. So you completed this last time. If there's any changes that need to be made from feedback or after rethinking, this is what you'll want to do first. If you make changes to this document that you have in our shared folder, please follow that up with an email to myself and Ms. Collins so that we're aware of that, because we might not be able to know just if you go in and change it, which is perfect, that's your document, so to work it, but let us know that you've changed this document, as we've already done a little bit of work around what you've put together here, which you'll see in just a moment. So we need to know that that's been changed. So if you're good to go on this, then you can start work on the actual unit development guides. And let me pull that over to the screen to remind you what I'm talking about there. I've about 100 windows open on my other screen here, so let me find it. There it is. Okay, so this is what you've been working on, and you've put in reading, writing, and speaking and listening standards last time. A lot of you got to big ideas. Language and foundational skills targets. So we talked about foundational skills a little bit. But language should be simpler. In the Lucy Calkins Units of Study, that curriculum, that Common Core alignment book that we've handed out to you, it includes the language targets that are covered in the writing units. As we talked about earlier in the core literacy trainings, language targets are taught during writing. If I'm teaching language targets outside of writing, that is never giving students the opportunity to practice the skill on the field. That would be as if I shot baskets all the time in a gym that's empty with no fans and no defense, does not make me a good basketball player. I'm only a good basketball player if shooting that gym in a game situation, which is writing. So that's why your language targets are already laid out in the units of study. So you'll want to just go through and figure out when to teach those language targets for mastery, the standards, the Common Core standards at your grade level in language, when to teach them in mastery in your units based upon when they come in the units of study sequence for Lucy Calkins. If you need those frameworks, let us know, but you should have left with copies of those as well to just put those into the units that you've already created. The foundational skills also go in this block, and we talked a lot about a phonics program or word work program that we follow in a sequence. You know, I think there's still a lot of work for us to do, so I've juggled this and I've talked to people about this, and I think there's work for us to do, but what I want us to keep our focus on is right now we're just speaking about the foundational skills that are listed in the Common Core. So we're not talking about the sequence we teach letters or the sequence that we actually teach blending. I do think that's an important conversation for us to have as a district, but we're not going to have that right now in making these curriculum maps. As much as we just want to lay out the actual standards, and the standards don't necessarily get into the individual sequence of when I'm teaching which phonemes and when I'm teaching what blends, and the order is not in the standards. This is just for the standards. I'm going to trust your judgment on this ultimately, but if you need guidance on how to lay out the foundational skills, a common resource that we do have is the 2011 Journeys, which has a word work section to it. Though Journeys has a lot of faults in it, it gives us a phonics continuum, which I've said a lot of times, it's not important necessarily what sequence you follow, you just got to follow one. So phonics hasn't changed with Common Core standards. The sounds still make the same in the English language. So because this is a resource we all have, this is what I'm going to point you to use as a guide for you to pace out some of your word work standards and foundational skills standards that are at your grade level. I'll include some links as well to the documents I'm about to pop up right now. Here's one document. This is the Journeys Common Core alignment, and it scrolls really slowly for reasons I haven't quite figured out yet. But you can see it has phonics awareness and phonics. It shows the sequence that they're teaching things in. So you would want to align the Common Core standards. So use your Common Core cards from that box and align out the foundational skills that match the sequence of this Journeys. This is a suggestion. You don't have to. If you feel like a sequence is better, we've trusted you as leaders to do this work for our district. I'm not going to take that away now, but this can be used as a guide. So this is one link I'll send to you to have. Also, I'll send you this one, which is very similar. It has all the grade levels, the correlations, and when you click one of those documents to open, it looks like this. So it's very similar in nature. It just has the phonics skills that are covered in each of those in the sequence. Again, it's about the sequence. We're not going back to the Journeys. It's just a sequence for you to use to match the foundational skills, Common Core standards with the units. So I'm going to put these down. So that is what will go in here. So just the standards. I know I'm saying that, repeating myself right now, but you're just worried about the standards of your grade level of the foundational skills, which obviously at kindergarten and first grade, they're the heaviest, and then they get much less at additional grade levels. Now, for some of our older grade levels especially, you might have standards that repeat in units, especially over here with fluency. So we all have fluency standards, K through 5, but at 4th and 5th grade, there's really just 2 fluency standards. They're going to need to repeat because they're important. The fluency standard that talks about reading text on your grade level is going to be in your last unit. But then when it talks about just the process of reading a text fluently, that's going to repeat in units because you're going to assess that throughout many units. You might not assess it for mastery like it says up here, but but you're going to assess it at some level. How well are these students moving through the fluency standards? So you'll need to pace those out and they will repeat. Again, you might have questions on that once you get into that work, but at the same time, I think when you start laying out your standards, you'll see this fluency standard needs to go in every unit. This fluency standard needs to go at the end of the year. This fluency standard needs to go in the beginning of the year. And Anchor Standard 10 from up here, reading text fluently at your grade level, that will go in everyone's final unit. Email questions, ask questions, and again, we'll be around personally on Thursday to answer questions about that if confusing. Next piece, learning targets. So after you finish mapping out your standards, you will get into learning targets, writing the actual learning targets. I want to note here that the learning targets are suggested learning targets for the unit. In the PLC process, when you look at standards before you start teaching a unit, you generate learning targets. This is just a guide for teachers, of possible learning targets. Some resources for this that you can use. You each have the Fayette County maps as a resource, which have learning targets that you can steal from if you want and put in ours. There's a site that a teacher has sent me called Wiki Teachers, which I have been very impressed with as I've started to look more and more through it. You do have to register for a free account, but then you go up here to Unwrap Standards, you go to your grade level, and you can select standards, and they have student-friendly learning targets as well as knowledge targets, which can be turned easily into I can statements for each standard. So this is a great resource to use to put in some of those learning targets. Don't recreate the wheel, right? Ultimately, what matters is the instruction that matches the learning targets. The learning target itself isn't going to change the world. Allowing students to know what they're going to learn is critically important, and then matching instruction to what you want students to learn is critically important. But ultimately, teachers can edit learning targets slightly based on the needs of their students. We're just trying to give them a guide. So you have the Fayette County maps, you have this Wiki Teacher site here, again up here in Unwrap Standards where you get those, to help you create those learning targets and to put on your sheet, which would go down here for speaking and listening, the fluency targets, the word work ones, the reading comprehension, and the writing and language from the standards that you identified up here. Hoping that is, with the work we've done so far, understood where we are with that. But again, please ask questions. I'm sending this out before Thursday, so you have time to view and ask questions of me before that. A few other things I want to go over. Oh, one last thing. I'm sorry. I knew there was one thing I was about to forget. The suggested anchor text. So I took the units that you did last time that you all created and sent it to a contact that I have who helps me out tremendously. I'd love to tell you I just sat at home and made these lists out of my brain, but there are people a lot smarter than me that I know, and I trust them. So I sent the units. So for example, third grade, their first unit is geography. Here are some books at the third grade reading level that match geography. Whether they're fiction or nonfiction, they're reading A to Z level, the interest level suggested by this book company. And this is a teacher resource available. So some of these from BookSource have like teacher's guides to help you teach. So it says whether there's a teacher resource available. So it's giving you a number of suggestions for this unit that you could use as an anchor text. It also, if you listed a secondary content on your sheet, it also put the secondary content down there as well. A mix of nonfiction and fiction throughout it, and you can see as we go down. So this tab here is 3rd through 5th. This tab here is grades 1 through 2. It scrolls up there. And I don't have K yet, and working on K. Don't worry about the pricing. That's not for you to worry about at this time. You're just looking at the text that they have suggested for each of these units. I realize there might be text you don't know. Obviously, there's ways around that. Looking on Amazon for what the text is a great way to get some sort of viewpoint of that text if you feel like you need that. If you feel like you don't know any of them and there's no way for you to make a recommendation of a strong text to use as a mentor text for the unit, then we can talk about trying to get some samples for you. But do what you can to see if you can make 1 to 2 suggestions right up here for an anchor text for each of your units. If you need a few more right now, if you need to put 2 to 4 right now and then maybe try to pare down, I understand that, but we're going to try to really support from the district level the purchasing of some of these for you. So if you put 4, we keep it at 4. Whereas I think schools can have some autonomy on which ones to buy, we want some level of consistency to them so that we can continue to collaborate across the district. Great teachers are made even greater when they can talk about similar work. And so if we can pare down as much as can, then we can get even more consistent resources, though I'm not going to hold that as a type, just as a suggestion. So you can see for each of your units, they're here for you to look through. As you make suggested mentor text or anchor text, you'll want a mix of fiction and nonfiction. Though obviously if I'm teaching informational writing, nonfiction is going to be my most likely what I'm going to use. For narrative, that's going to lend itself to fiction. But when I get into argument writing or opinion writing, I can have either nonfiction or fiction. I can go either way there. Don't get tied into thinking because it's argumentative writing, it has to be nonfiction. That works best a lot. I will say that. That works best a lot. But if you have only one narrative unit, you're never going to get kids quality fiction books if you're always lining it up. So use argumentative as a chance to have a fictional book in there as an anchor text as well. So you can see there's a mix in that unit, A to Z reading level there and an interest level that you can look for to make a suggestion based on your unit. So those are the directions there. Let me see if I can find me, pop myself back up. Okay, so last things I want to mention is ask questions for clarification. That's most important. Please ask questions for clarification. We will deliver cards to your sites. So the boxes, I got one right down here. So the boxes that look like this, some of you took them with you, but there are some sitting here in my office. Like I have 5th grade, 4th grade, and kindergarten in my office. So I will get those 3 delivered to your site. So they will be there for you. Well, again, we will check in through the day. Somebody will definitely be there. I'm going to try to be everywhere. I do have one other thing. It is here in the county on that day, but hopefully I'll still be able to make it to everybody. You'll have my phone number. I'll put that in the email so that you can reach me and ask questions throughout the day. And again, ask questions before the day when you watch this video. Last thing I want to say is when we do these units, it's big that eventually they look good, right? That the fonts all look the same, that the spacing, the tabs, they all look the same, you know, that sentences don't break out at the end of the page. That's important, and we'll have to spend some time on that, and we can worry about that piece later, though. What I don't want you to do on this Thursday, or today, if you're watching it on Thursday, is spend your hours trying to get the formatting to look perfect. There's enough work to be done for you to hammer out the work on Thursday. We can worry about the formatting at a later time. So really work on the work, getting those what we hope to get accomplished. We want by the end of the day, the pacing guides, the first drafts, so this is all still first draft, but the first draft's done of the pacing guide and your 4 unit sheets done by the end of the day on Thursday with all the standards, a suggested anchor text, language, foundational skills added in, fluency standards added in, and then the learning targets by the end of the day on Thursday. There is a ton to do. I know that. That's why I'm hoping being in schools where you can just be with your grade level and having the whole day, you'll be able to utilize that. So please ask questions. Thank you, thank you, thank you for the work. So important. We have wonderful kids in this district that rely on great teachers like you to make sure that they have a viable curriculum for them to learn. So we can make sure that every single student in Woodford County has success. We started this together with the mission that we're working for novice elimination. We need to get every student out of novice, but that starts with making sure we have quality curriculum for which we're teaching our students. And I thank you for that work. Ask questions, email, call, and get to work. Thank you all.